You may see a lot of people that are inadvertently doing this kind of thing, not necessarily with malicious intents. And scrutinize the permissions that your app is requesting, and that's a pretty obvious one. But some of these permissions are pretty benign and seem fairly harmless. But ask yourself, like, does my permission really need to be able to read logs? Most likely it doesn't. Also, system updates, keep your phone patched, up to date. I mean, if you are concerned about if a rogue application does slip into the market, someone being able to root your phone and build up a mobile botnet, as other researchers have been demonstrating in the past, hopefully they'll stay on top of this with patches. Developers, these users, when you're requesting these permissions to access a lot of their private data, they're essentially trusting you with that. So just be aware what you're doing with that. Think about the things that you're logging. If you are logging a lot of stuff for debugging, it doesn't necessarily need to be there in production code. So, I mean, you can do a lot of the things that Tim talked about of seeding in information and seeing where that propagates out to, and see if you had anything to do with that. Also, make use of the permissions in the system. If other applications don't have any reason to be receiving your intents or starting your activities, enforce a permission so that they can't do that. Also, along the same lines with the intents, don't be sending private data that the user would care about across these intents, because all these are being logged in the system. Anyone's going to be able to see that. The OEMs, you know, a lot of the same things that developers should be doing are the same things OEMs should be doing. They kind of should be setting the bar for a lot of these things. You know, because as a developer, why should you care about leaking user data if the OEM is already doing it before you did? Also, it would be nice to see better patching on some of these, keeping up to date on a lot of these libraries, making sure that if you are using an old library, make sure you have a backported patch for that to avoid some of these problems. Same with the kernels. So yeah, that wraps everything up. So if you guys have any questions.
Most of the logging examples I saw were off of HTC. Is that running with HTC since UI, or is that just a stock HTC?
So he asked if most of the things that he was being that we saw being logged were off of the stock HTC Sense UI, because he noticed a lot of the logging was from HTC stuff. Some of that stuff is, and like with the clock widget, it's things that you can remove from the screen so that you're not going to be running that anymore. But not necessarily all that stuff is going to matter if it's the HTC Sense UI.
How much is Steve Jobs paying you?
Not a dime.
There's a Nexus 1 in my pocket, so.
How many devices would you say are starting to take advantage of secure boot loading capabilities?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Secure boot loading. A couple of devices have secure bootloaders that prevent you from loading your own ROMs.
Secure bootloaders. Can I take that one? There's your microphone.
Yeah, so actually there are devices out there that are taking advantage of secure bootloaders, and that's actually, you know, it's actually one of the interesting things that I've seen. I think the modding community is seeing gaining root privileges on devices as a means to try to attack some of those facilities. But you know, what we're not discussing is that secure bootloaders are kind of irrelevant. Then you still have a big security hole here where someone's obtained root access on the device.
Is that it?
On the basis that Android's effectively running a version of Linux, is SANS or anybody starting to track these vulnerabilities? Oh, and in terms of the fact that I can go out and I can see all the vulnerabilities in the normal Linux kernel listed. on these sites. Is anybody actually doing that sort of thing?
Tracking the vulnerabilities in the Linux kernel?
Against the Android devices, so we can actually see vulnerability report CV.
Oh, okay. So he asked if anyone right now is currently tracking Linux vulnerabilities against Android devices. Not to my knowledge. I don't think there's any central place. I imagine that Google is probably trying to keep up on these things and tracking that, and a lot of these handset manufacturers are trying to keep up on top of these things. But yeah, there's no like central location for that kind of stuff.
Hi there.
Yep.
You showed in the beginning how the normal application permissions accept model is an all or nothing. If you want to download and install the app, it's okay. These are the permissions you're going to give the app, right? I found it frustrating when I want to get an app and then I look at the permissions, go, I'm not going to install this.
Yeah.
What do you foresee as the future of giving feedback to those applications and changing the dynamic a little bit so that we can say, no, you can't ask for that?
So he's asking if permissions can, so it's kind of a one-shot, all-or-nothing thing, if what we kind of see, or where we see that going as far as more fine-grained access. So I actually just recently read a research paper of someone that, I can't remember what they call it, like Android permission extension or something like that, but they basically implemented what you're talking about of being able to grant certain permissions, like say they won't allow it to do all the things that it wants to do except access the internet. And so they built this extension in, and personally I think that would be nice to see that kind of functionality built in. But I think that they probably also see that as degrading the user experience, because if the application doesn't handle that properly, that it can't do one thing when it thinks that it can, that may be something to consider. But ideally, I would like to see something like that.
Really simple question. Where do you guys see Android security, both as attacks and as defensive applications, going in the near future?
Where do we see like Android security and defensive attacks going in the future? So I mean, like the mobile world is kind of heating up a bit. It seems like it's becoming a popular topic. There are some attacks that we're seeing in the wild. It's obviously not widespread, but as powerful as a lot of these phones are becoming, and the fact that you're essentially a dedicated internet connection with all of your personal information, I do kind of see that stuff being more of a target for people that can figure out ways to monetize that. And it seems that a lot of people are doing a lot more research in this kind of thing as well.
Do you have examples of things that are outside of the application space, as far as like the attacking the browser itself, or the text messages that may come in, or things of that nature?
Like actual like proper attacks against like a specific application? We haven't really done any research into that kind of stuff. It's definitely something that we've all been talking about looking into, and seeing what kind of attacks we can do specifically against an application, and if we're able to do that, what can we do with what we gain from that. But no, that's nothing, we haven't actually looked into that kind of stuff. Is it? Okay, if that's it, then thank you guys for coming.